always want to say, y'all want to ask the blessing before we get started?
Sure, yeah, you pray for us, honey. I'm not a guess.
Okay. All right, let's pray together real quick, and we will start going. God, who is our home, and who is the one who travels the earth, who knows every bit of it, who is right here, but who is also over there. We thank you for your presence. May we attune to it now through these memories of the Holy Land and our conversation together. May it draw us closer to you. In Jesus' name, amen. Y'all, I'm so excited. And this is about the hardest thing to ever do, is to pull pictures from an experience like a pilgrimage. So what I have done for the foreseeable future, what I have done is just picked my very favorite things, the things that stood out to me. This is not everything from the Holy Land. And I can come back and we can talk about more as it all comes up. But here's what's come to the surface for today. So that's just a little caveat. All right. First, here's Aaron and I. We were sitting on the plane here in Dallas, about to fly to Frankfurt on that day. And we took this picture because it just, all of a sudden, it was impressed upon me that I am going on a pilgrimage. And I've known that, and I've been preparing for that for months before this picture was taken. Going on a pilgrimage, I'm not going on a tour, I'm not going on vacation, I'm going to walk where my Lord has walked, where thousands upon millions of faithful people have walked and wrestled and tried with God and with one another. And that meant something to me. But all of a sudden, sitting in the chair, that tiny little airplane chair, I felt an impression upon me that I should carry the prayers. I should open up, and anybody who wanted to send me prayer requests, I would carry them with me as I went and pray for these folks and their intentions and their needs as I am there in the Holy Land. And it was such a blessing. I am not going to cry today, but it was such a blessing the way that the way my sisters and brothers trusted me with their hopes and their needs and their sorrows. And I got to hold those and pray through them every day on the trip. And that was such a blessing and an honor. So I will say it's also my approach. Some people do go on Holy Land trips, and it is a tour, and it's something that transforms them, because travel is transformative, if that's a word. But my approach, I felt called to be a pilgrim. All right, so that meant open heart and an open mind, and carrying the prayers of the community of faith with me. There's Aaron and I. All right. First stop that is the most interesting to me is we went to Tel Dan. We flew in. I'm not going to give y'all the minutiae of the travel parts. Unless you want it, then y'all stop me and ask questions, okay? I'm down with that. But the first stop is this place called Tel Dan. And a tel is like a city that's been knocked down and then built over, and then knocked down and built over top. But Dan is just here in the Holy Land. So we flew in somewhere down this way and then drove up, and we stayed in this region first at a kibbutz, which was so beautiful, and hospitality the entire trip was beautiful. Everything you needed, you had, warm feeling, all that, it was beautiful. But Tel Dan, here we are. Y'all, this is like 5,000 years old. This place, this city is like 5,000 years old, and what we're looking at is how people would come into this city. I have here learning only what a body can. When we put our bodies in places, in the Holy Land or even the other side of Dallas, when we go places, we learn something new just in our own bodies. This, I am pregnant. This is an incline, and these rocks are bumpy on purpose. But this is how you would enter into this ancient city. We're talking like the time of the storytelling of Abraham, you could go around to this town, Dan. But this is rocky, 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 and it's an incline, and that's to slow people down as they come into the city. One, so that they're not intruded. Horses can't really run quickly on that type of ground, and it's just to slow people down. Isn't that interesting? So if we can, in the biblical...
So do people walk up that?
Yes. Oh, yeah. That is the entrance to the city
Wow.
of Dan. So again, here we are.
I'd be on the bus.
And we hiked to this place too. We hiked, there's a river up here that feeds into the Jordan. It's much prettier up here. We hiked by that river up to the city of Dan. And we get to this and I'm like, whoo, all right. So we go up the incline and into the city. This is interesting. Just outside of the entrance, just outside of here, so I'm talking like right here, is this. Anybody want to take a guess? What is that?
An altar?
Yes, it's an altar. Any curiosities as to why it was outside of the city?
Well, that was where Jeroboam set up the second temple to Baal when the new kingdom was formed. And I don't know if that was where he put his altar, but there should be an altar to Baal somewhere around.
This is a high place. It's a pagan sacrifice center that is outside the gates, so that people visiting this Israelite town, they may be pagan or just not Israelite, they have a place to sacrifice, but it doesn't contaminate the city or come into the city at all. And I just thought that was so fascinating, just to all of a sudden, walk up that incline and whoa, there's a high place. On the one hand, it was moving. Now there's lots of tensions in the story of the Holy Land, as we'll see. It was moving for me to see this, because I know that there were people that were not Israelite during that time, and it was interesting that they had a place too. It wasn't inside the city, but it was outside. And that, I don't know, it just struck me as kind of surprising that there was that kind of, I don't know if we'd call it tolerance or something, but just acknowledgement of there are people who are not like us. And there it was. It also, same time, gave me the heebie-jeebies. I was like, golly, there's a high place. I wonder what was sacrificed there. What kind of faith was played out on that altar? Interesting. So both. This might be funny. Inside those gates, when you walk up that hill, inside those gates, you come right to this. This is where the king of Dan would sit. The throne would be right here, and it was just pretty as you please, right there in front of you. You walk into the gate, and there's the king. Hello, king. It was fascinating. But that, and it's just so simple too. I always imagine like a royal throne room, like the Queen of England would have or something. But this was much more earthy. This was 5,000 years ago, of course, but it was much more earthy. And the king was literally, it's just 2 steps up. It was literally 2 steps up, and only 2 steps up from anybody who walked through the gates. Of course, there would be guards and all that type of stuff, but there's the throne. I'm saying, I will be your benevolent ruler. And this, if we continued walking this way, around a corner. All right, so envision with me again. We would go up this rocky incline and in the gate, and there's the king, and then around another corner, and we're here. These are rooms where, in the case of siege, in case of intrusion, warriors would just hang out in these rooms. And when people came around the corner, they would just jab them, just get them, just like that, because they have to come around that corner. So the defenses of the city, really interesting. I've got my hand in a hole that was hewn 5,000 years ago. This was day 1 of our trip, and I was like, whoa. I'm touching somebody else's work from 5,000 years ago, and it stands just like that. This is the base of where a gate, this is like the bottom of a gate where they put the rod in the ground. So, interesting. Again, place this in your imagination in the time of when Abraham's stories were being first told, into, like he said, the establishment of the north and the south kingdoms. We're looking at places like this. And we come to this place. This is the Holy Temple in the north. This was the site, the temple at Dan. And it wasn't to, this one wasn't to Baal. This is to Yahweh. When we hiked up through the city and got to this place, it just sort of opened up all of a sudden. And I was like, I'm looking over people's shoulders. What are we looking at? What's happening? And then our guide, Joel, said, this is the temple. And again, just the shock of it. Whoa. Something's happened here. A lot of things have happened here. It just gives me chill bumps. Y'all, this is where sacrifices were made on this stone. And this is a well that was always filled with water, and they would continuously flood the well in order to wash away the blood from the altar stone. This is just right here on the other side of that wall. Again, so earthy, so approachable. Not really what I imagined. And this is not the temple in Jerusalem that, Solomon and all his glory, and then Herod, really jazzed up later on. It was just surprising how approachable it was. And how, oh my gosh, right there on that stone, animals killed, and people, you walk into the temple and just watch it take place. The human experience of that is striking to me. Here is when you walk into, so the stone of the altar is, or the sacrifice stone is just right here, down in a pocket. And this is what you're looking at. And this would have been not the Holy of Holies, but like the inner court. And then up would have been the Holy of Holies up there. Interesting. Any questions? Just kind of looks like a pile of rocks a little bit. But again, when we were there, the approachability and how these were real people who were acting out their faith, expressing their faith in these places. That feeling is not something I'll ever be able to shake. And it comes up even now. I've been working with our Advent scriptures every week. Just the feeling of, today, Zephaniah is our Old Testament scripture. And talking about sacrifices in the temple and all that type of stuff, I can feel what it was like to be in this place, in places like this now.
What's that? Is that a steel structure or something they've erected on?
Yeah, the steel structure is just to help people imagine this would have been the size of the walls and stuff like that. They put that there.
The Ark of the Covenant was never there, right?
I'm actually not sure about that. I'm not sure about that. I don't believe so.
I don't think it ever left Jerusalem. That wouldn't have been the Holy of Holies. I don't know whether.
Well, that's what confused me when you said Holy of Holies.
Holy of Holies would have been in the temple in Jerusalem, but whether
They
that.
have a Holy of Holies here. Both the temple in the north and the south, because they were sort of competing religions a little bit. So it really depends on whose story we believe. If the guts of the temple were in Jerusalem only or in the north, it just depends. But this was where people would go and worship in the north. And that, what was striking too, I remember having such a tension about like, well, golly, why did we have such a problem? Why did they have such a problem with people worshiping up in the north? Look at how far. Here's Dan. Dan is up here. Jerusalem, I can't ever find anything when I'm looking for it. Jerusalem's way down here. And these are people just walking on their feet. Or in the animals. I had such a feeling of like, well, why don't they have every right to worship here? You know? Gosh, can you imagine the cost and expense of traveling through all that terrain, the rocks and the mountains and the dry places and the wet places and all that stuff in order to worship? And I don't have an answer for that. That's something I'm going to be wrestling with for quite some time. But Aaron did say, well, remember that we don't know what kind of worship was happening here. This could have been a place of faithful worship and faithful intention. It could have been a place corrupt. Just like in Jerusalem, though, was a place of faithful intention and faithful worship. It was also corrupt. So just some tensions to hold on to. But there's the temple in
Wasn't
the north.
Samson of the tribe of Dan? Or am I wrong on that?
I don't know.
Tribe of Dan?
I don't know about Samson.
He was a
Because they
Nazarene.
warred with the Philistines, and the Philistines, I think, actually stole
They
the
would have
Ark
been-
of the Covenant at one point.
Yes, but that would have been down south. It wasn't up here.
I'm not sure where Dan is in Jerusalem. But, I mean, in Israel. Next stop. Y'all ready? This is Benice. It's in Caesarea Philippi, which is just here. So Dan was like here. Here's Caesarea Philippi. This was a really cool place. But again, we walk up and I'm like, Joel, what are we looking at? What is this? It's beautiful. It's majestic. I wish I was a better photographer and I could have captured how big and immense this place is. It's a mountain. And then this cave right here is about the size of, like the opening at the front of our sanctuary. It's like that. It's so big. It's pretty shallow because it collapsed a few hundred years ago on the inside, but it's huge. We walk up, Joel, what are we looking at? And we actually all sat down over here underneath the trees to talk for a while. This is the temple to Pan. Does anybody know anything about Pan? Pan was the god of the outcast in mythology. He had a really sad story. He wasn't wanted by a parent. He was kicked out and he was an outcast. Nobody liked him and hated him. But he became the god of the outcast. He was also very playful. He would hold parties. There's also lots of stories about him chasing women everywhere, chasing his exploits. But this god Pan, this is where he was venerated. And what in the world does this have to do with Jesus? Well, there's that story, where Jesus takes his disciples away and he asks, who do you say that I am? This is where Jesus asked that question in Caesarea Philippi. He says, who are all these people saying that I am? Some people say John the Baptist. Some people say Elijah. Who do you say that I am? This was a purely Gentile area. The god Pan, his temple is where the outcasts would go. Outcasts meaning homosexuals, people with different abilities, people who were just different, poor folk, etc., would congregate here at the temple at Pan. And again, Gentile. And Jesus took his Jewish disciples to this place, this Gentile place, and said, who do you say that I am? As I sit here in the midst of the outcasts. This was such a powerful moment for me to think, oh my gosh, here is Jesus. And this is in the Gospel of Matthew, which is a very Jewish book. But even Matthew couldn't get away from this moment, that Jesus is the God of the outcasts. Jesus is the one, these are my people, he says. I am here for them too. I'm not afraid of them, and I don't want you to be either. I am for them. Whoa. We actually walked up in there, into the cave and stuff. This is one of the coolest moments for me on the trip. A few years ago, the Mexico started digging for a hotel, and all of a sudden, they're like, holy crap, this is something serious. This is a site of some sort. And then the Catholic Diocese of Mexico got involved, and sure enough, they found Magdala. They found the city of Magdala. They were digging for a hotel. That stopped. And they found this incredibly preserved city. This is
This
a
is in
first.
Mexico,
You said Mexico.
Mexico, the country of Mexico, was building a hotel in Jerusalem. In
Oh.
Israel. Yeah.
Oh, really?
hmm Yeah, different countries build stuff,
Oh, okay.
in the Holy Land, which is fascinating. But they were building a hotel, and they found this. This is a first century synagogue. The ruins of a first century synagogue. And this is the place where our tour guide, Joel, I'm going to show you his picture in a bit. He's a very learned person. He does humanitarian work for the Israeli government all over the world. He has several degrees. He does tour guiding as a hobby. He does it about 4 times a year. We were incredibly lucky to walk this place with Joel. He is a Jew, but he's a Jew that does keep Sabbath, but he's very progressive and open, et cetera, et cetera. He said this, out of all the places we are going to go, out of all the places, Jesus was here. We know that he walked through here. We know. And so we are pretty sure that Jesus was inside this synagogue, teaching and talking and conversating, et cetera, et cetera. And so, of course, this is the place where Mary is from, Mary Magdalene. They've built this church on the water. This is on the side of the water. They've built a church, and in there, it's all arches and curves. When you come to the vestibule and you first walk in, the acoustics, you can whisper like this. And on the other side of the room, they can hear you, just like you're whispering in their ear. We sang a song there, and it went up into the whole place.
Wow.
And they've done that on purpose. This is Mary Magdalene's town, the apostle to the apostles, the first Christian preacher ever.
Where is it in the map? Are we still in Caesarea?
I believe it's somewhere, yeah, we're up here.
You're in
This
Upper
is
Galilee,
Magdala.
aren't you?
Do you see right here?
Okay.
Do what?
Yeah, there's
I
the
said,
one.
that's what they call Upper Galilee, or just Galilee? In that, the area?
Yeah. This is like the Golan Heights up
Yeah.
here, which is where we stayed during this first week. But here's Magdala. See, it's on the side of the Sea of Galilee.
It's right next to the sea, isn't it?
Yeah. That was the source of their income in Magdala. Yeah. And so Jesus and his fishermen, disciples, of course, were here. But how amazing is it that this place has been found and it's become a place that lifts up the voices of women. There's even art inside the church. This didn't even happen on purpose. They didn't plan it this way, but they had a Catholic woman, an evangelical woman, and an Episcopal woman actually did the art for the whole church. And it's fascinating that each of those, seemingly disparate groups that's a big expression in that church. This is one small chapel, and it's a picture of Mary and Jesus, and it's an icon. I'll have to get you a better picture of it so you can see. Anyways, but that just gives you a sense of this is one small chapel inside the church where you could go and pray. But it's become a place that uplifts women's voices. Here's a better picture of the synagogue. We learned that the synagogue was not a place of prayer at this point in the first century. Prayer was for the temple. Synagogue was basically like a community center where you would talk about sacred things because your whole life is sacred. Y'all know that Jews have a prayer for when you go to the bathroom. Everything is sacred. Everything is sacred. Your whole life, there is no separation of the holy. That gets a little bit tricky. Your life is meant to be living into the holy. You are to be living a holy life.
No compartmentalization.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. So this was basically a community center. Joel told us that both men and women would go to the synagogue. I've grown up my entire life being told that women were not allowed in the synagogue. Women would not go. But that was not true. We have evidence here of both women and men having dialogue discussions, and that was the center of their community life, was this dialogue. Not didactic finality of thought, not absolute anything, but the dialogue and the wrestling together with the word, with the law, and with one another, and the God who is present in all of it. This is where this would happen. This was remarkable here. This is like, we don't really know what it is exactly, except it connects this synagogue with the temple. There are markings on it where it's like, there are certain things like the loaves of the presence and different things like that that are in the temple are carved on this rectangular box. It's not a box, it's a stone. And so they think, archaeologists and historians and biblical scholars think, our best guess is that this is the beginning of the synagogue becoming a place that is connected with the temple in a prayerful way. The beginning. That was surprising to me. I didn't realize that it wasn't always that way. This is Father Kelly. He's from Ireland. He had a beautiful accent, but he is the Catholic Church Diocese of Mexico. He is over everything that's happening here at the site. The archaeology is continuing to go on, and Mexico is building a hotel, but it's going to be smack next to all of the archaeology work, and one whole side of the hotel is just going to be windows, so that people can look. And yeah, I just think that's fascinating. So there's the synagogue here, and then back here in the back, those are all homes. And these were wealthy folks. There are mikvahs actually in people's houses, big bathtubs essentially, in people's houses. So we see, I've always heard that, of course, Nazareth is just the backwoods, and ain't nobody got any money in Nazareth. And basically that's the sense that we get about the whole Holy Land, is that it was just a poor place. There were people impoverished in these areas, but there were also people who were very wealthy, very, very wealthy. And doesn't that bring something to the conversation? The people weren't poor because there was no other option. People were poor because some people got rich. And this is some of the places that we see.
Well, that doesn't happen anymore.
I know.
But that is
Jeez
not,
Louise.
that is not, no, we don't want to argue that.
Isn't that fascinating?
It's not correct. That's okay.
Oh, it is correct.
Who's to say that some people are,
Wait, you had
People-
said that it's a small very small percentage.
Oh,
that
I'm just
was
saying that the
correct.
cause and effect is not so direct, but that's okay. That's another matter.
I know some prophets who would disagree. This is a photo coming from, walking up from the sea. And it just struck me as I was walking, golly, Jesus saw this place. Of course, Jesus knows this place. If we think about Jesus as the Word made flesh, the wisdom of God that spoke the world into being. He's always known this place.
Now, is this close to,
I'm standing in Magdala and
Okay.
just looking at this mountain.
okay, gotcha.
Yeah. And something else, the mountains in Israel were so fascinating. The first night we got stuck in a lot of traffic coming from the airport down to our first hotel. We got stuck in a lot of traffic. But up on these mountains, you could see lights. And it just occurred to me, y'all know when Elijah, it was Elijah, not Elisha. I always get them mixed up. Where the prophets of Baal, where he said, you get your God to light this fire, and that whole scene, that happened on top of a mountain, just like this one. And it gave me chills to be in the bus, stuck in traffic, and it's dark. But I was able to see the top of those mountains so clearly. Anything that was happening up there, I could see. And so to imagine, put yourself as an onlooker. I just thought, I come from the Carolinas where our mountains are, covered in trees and just, we're shrouded in mystery. But here, everybody, when Elijah got up on that mountain, he was drawing everybody's attention. Watch, and you could. And so it was cool to imagine doing that. These mountains are everywhere. Just like that. This was another stop that was really special to me. This is in Nazareth, which we're getting down here. So here's Magdala, and there's Nazareth. This is the Basilica of the Annunciation. My very first sermon that I ever preached was called Ordinary Mary. I was 14 years old, and it was about how someone my age, how a girl at my age, just an ordinary person, was called by God to change the world. And so Mary has always been a friend to me in the great cloud of witnesses. And so this was a very meaningful stop. And actually, before Aaron and I were ever dating, we were friends at this point, but before we were ever dating, he came. I'm going to show you a picture in a second. This is also a special place to him. Something that struck me in the Holy Land is that I was anticipating very masculine imagery, very male ideas presented in visual presentation. But actually there's so many women presented. So of course we visited Mary Magdalene's town and saw her, experienced her. But Mary is everywhere. Female disciples are included in many of the iconography and stuff that's all over in all the churches. That was surprising, and it was challenging to me in my life to remember the women. Jesus' disciples were not only men. We have the 12. We know that they were male. But the disciples, meaning the whole group that followed Christ, were not just men and their wives, but women who of their own volition followed Jesus and funded his ministry. And we see that also in Acts. Women like Lydia, the dyer, the purple dyer, that was a very lucrative business. And she was a deacon in the church, etc. So that was just compelling to me and encouraging. This picture right here I took because I just had this feeling that Mary was looking over my shoulder in this place. That my sister and my friend, Mary, who we will meet one day, was looking over my shoulder, and I turned around and there was this beautiful image. This in the Basilica of the Annunciation, in the courtyard, and in the church itself. There are pictures from almost every country in the world. There's art from every country just about in the world. Their representation of Mary.
Really?
Yeah.
Now, is this Catholic?
This is Catholic.
I mean, I'm like,
This is Catholic. This is also the place, I don't know if some of y'all saw, George did a talk here in front of a statue of the Patriarch of the Orthodox Church and the Pope meeting for the very first time. There's a statue commemorating that experience here in this courtyard as well. So overall, this is a place of that commemorates the incarnation, the coming together of seemingly disparate parts. So that's the outside of the church. There's Mary looking over my shoulder. Here's an example. This is Ireland's Mary. I think that's Our Lady of Loch is what they call her. This is Greece. I think this is Brazil. I just think it's just fascinating.
It is fascinating.
Yeah, so that and it's cool to imagine that these places, these people, there's something about Mary that they,
Oh, there's I think that's a movie.
there's something about Mary that I find very powerful, that she is open to us. In a sense, Mary represents us all. An ordinary person invited to do an extraordinary thing, to birth God into the world, to enflesh the divine. And we see that people, faithful folks in so many countries around the world, reflect that. Reflect that. I think that's fascinating. Here is Aaron. Aaron this is in the courtyard. Here's some more, you can see these images there. This is in the courtyard. It's the crest. That is a Kai row up there at the top. Aaron had we'll have to have him tell his story. He had a very powerful mystical experience looking at that the first time that he came to the Holy Land. And when he got home, he went to Sturgis motorcycle rally with his parents, and he got that tattoo on his arm. So it was neat to be there. There's a statue. It's a tradition to hold Mary's hand and pray a prayer. Ask a blessing of God while you hold Mary's hand. And actually, they've just painted her hands again, but they turn black because people rub the paint off of her hands.
So all of this is outdoors?
Yeah, all of this is outdoors, and then you can go in, and it's this cavernous basilica.
I believe the art stays like that.
I know it, yeah. Oh, I'm going to have to send y'all an email. I can send you a link, and you can see images from every single country. It's just fascinating, especially now here in Advent. It might be a cool thing to do as a part of your prayer life, to be like, whoa. Just to see the interpretation of Mary. Okay. I just wanted to tell y'all that the peacock is a symbol of Jesus. Did you know that? I think that's fascinating. And it made me chuckle because I find it a little bit absurd. It's beautiful and it's playful and it's absurd. But this is everywhere in the Holy Land. Peacocks everywhere. And it just means Jesus. Their peacock flesh takes a really, really long time to decay if it's leathered. Like a really long time. And so back in ancient imagination, they thought, especially during medieval times, they're like, oh, this is a great symbol of Christ who doesn't decay, who will never decay, in the resurrected body. But I also find some kind of connection between the peacock and Pan, the god of the outcast, the absurd person who throws the parties, but welcomes people. There's some kind of connection there between peacock, Pan, and this Christ who turns over our notions of what is suitable, of what can be true in the world. Welcome.
These were like mosaics that were mostly uncovered in the flooring of the building.
Yes.
Probably from the Byzantine.
Yes.
Right.
I think they told us that peacocks just kind of were part of the natural habitat. They just are running around, which is hard to imagine, isn't it?
Peacocks and peahens are very noisy too.
This one, I'm not sure of the time period when this one is a Christian, a Christian era peacock. Okay.
And all the eyes, you notice all the eyes on the little even outside of there are the eyes. And that's a whole other mythological story.
So many things to play with. Something that I love and I treasure so much about this trip is how it's almost like I got downloaded with so much tradition and ideas and stories that now the Holy Spirit is going to be able to use inside of me. It's going to be able to draw to my attention and help me draw connections like never before. I thank God for that, and I thank y'all for that. That is that's a bit of grace to me. We went to the River Jordan down, let's see, I'm not going to be able to tell you exactly where, but it was somewhere around in here, because now it's a part of the West Bank area. But we got down to the River Jordan. This is sort of Israel on this side, and this right here is Jordan.
Ah.
Yeah. The only thing separating us from Jordanians was this puny little buoy. That's it. And water. That was really striking to me. This is the site where we commemorate Jesus being baptized by John the Baptist. There were all kinds of faith expressions taking place in this area. There were Orthodox, there were Pentecostals, there were Catholics, there were Baptists, there were all kinds of people there expressing their faith. And for some folks it was really difficult. They're like, why are they going down there dunking so many times? And being faced with difference in faith expression was a big deal for many on our trip. And it was something to wrestle with, to be like, oh, that doesn't seem sacred to me, or that seems disrespectful. But oh my goodness, okay, this is not about me. I need to just witness what's happening between these people and God. I just need to witness, not judge. That was a huge call on this trip. But also striking politically how foolish it seemed to be right there at that water and just a little buoy. It's the only thing separating the two places. There are men and women walking around with machine guns, ready to take care of anything that might happen. But all that was wanting to happen there, that Jordan, was for people to get in the water together, to make a commitment to God. There's something in there. There's something in that. Immediately after visiting the Jordan, we went to what's that place where they walked around the city several times and it all fell down? Jericho. We went to Jericho. The Mount of the Temptations is just by there, the modern day Jericho. And this is in contested land. And you could tell it was very depressed economically, etc. But we ate just in the shadow of the Mount of Temptations. Inside here, there's all kinds of caves, just pocked all in this mountain. And you can imagine Jesus camping there for those 40 days. Yeah. This is standing on the Mount of Olives, looking into Jerusalem. You see this is the Dome of the Rock, and this is the Temple Mount. Remember you were saying how big it was? This is the modern day Temple Mount. That is a huge piece of real estate right there. With the Dome of the Rock just in the center. And then over here we get the Wailing Wall, or the Western Wall is just here. And you enter, and then back behind there is like where the old city is, with the Jewish quarter and the Muslim quarter, and some Christian areas too. But standing up there and just looking, it was such a powerful experience to not just jump right into Jerusalem, but to travel in, to sort of follow Jesus' own life coming to Jerusalem. When we drove in, we were running out of time. I hate that. I'll have to come back and finish the thing.
Did we do that the first Sunday in January?
Well,
We'll work
yeah.
that schedule out.
I wish I could do January. But we were birthed into Jerusalem, if that makes sense. We had to go through a cave, through a tunnel, to get into Jerusalem. When we first arrived, we had to go through a tunnel, and all of a sudden Jerusalem opened up before us. And then when we left, we went out the same way through a tunnel, birthed back into the world. It was really cool. Here's just sights from inside the city. This is down in the old city. We're about to go. Let's leave that. There's just some sights from inside the city. Something that was really, really special to me was that the experience of Shabbat in Israel. All public transportation shuts down for Shabbat. And I looked forward to that all week long. Every day we walked between 5 and 10 miles every single day. And that was, of course, it was great to walk, but just the constant, like I said, downloading of everything that we saw and we experienced was beautiful and powerful, and my brain was like, I don't know what to do with everything. And I just set my sights on Sabbath. Sabbath is coming, and there will be time to process and to find a place for all of this. And that was such a gift. This is a picture of my lunch that I made at breakfast. I wrapped up a sandwich, and I just sat in the hotel and had that space. But just how powerful it was that so many other people around me were doing the same thing in their day-to-day lives. And that's an invitation to us all. Shabbat is open. Sabbath is open to all of us. It's a gift. It's not a requirement. And it was powerful, especially in that place. That's us outside of the museum. I wonder, just very quickly, this will be the last thing today, and this will be the last thing today, and then I'll have to come back if you'll have me. This was one of the coolest parts. I did not know it, but Israel is a segregated place. People with different religions are separated not only by their religion, but by their language as well. There's Israeli Jews, there's Israeli Christians, Israeli Muslims, there's Israeli Palestinian Christians, Israeli Palestinian Muslims, and all of them have different languages that they speak. And it is the norm that Israeli Jews go to their own schools. The public school system is segregated. Israeli Jews go one place, Palestinians, Arabs go to another. There are people that grow up their entire lives and they never interact with a Jew, may never interact with an Arab. And they live in the same city. We got to engage with some folks who were trying to do something about that. And it was powerful. Our first stop to try and understand everything was with Bader here. He is a Baptist pastor in Nazareth. His family is Palestinian. They've been living in Nazareth for about 200 years that they can document. 200 years. And he says when he was a child, he knew his grandparents, when they were alive, one day they woke up and they didn't have a home anymore. Even though they've been living in that place for 200 years, they woke up one day and they didn't have a home. But he and his family, Bader and his family, have decided to stay. Even though they open up the newspaper every day and there's hate speech about Christians, there's hate speech about Arabs. So that some radical fundamentalist Israeli Jews start talking about Arabs, Muslim and Christian, and then sometimes the Arab Muslims start talking about the Christians, and then so it was so fascinating for him to talk through his identity. He's like, I am Israeli. I'm an Israeli citizen. I am Palestinian. We've been here for a really long time. I am a Christian. Ain't nobody like that.
Isn't that only about 2% of the population?
Yes, that's right. That's right. But there he is, and they're actually in the Baptist school, which has it has like the top marks for education in Nazareth. And so Muslims and Jews will send their kids to the Baptist school. And actually our church funded the play court, like the volleyball court, the different sport court in their school. We funded that. But Bader talks about that. Just in his existence, he is promoting connection where prejudice would have none. We went to this school right here. This is called I think Yad Bayad, Hand in Hand School. It was started every single classroom and every single class of students, 50% Arab Palestinian, 50% Israeli Jew. Of course, they're all Israeli. But every single one. In the entire school, everybody learns Hebrew and everybody learns Arabic. Every single person. And they don't translate back and forth. Every classroom has a native Arab speaker and a native Hebrew speaker, and they just switch back and forth all day long. Even in the PTA meetings, they don't translate. They encourage the parents and grandparents and everyone else who would come into the children's lives to also pick up and learn each other's languages. Powerful, powerful stuff. We literally saw children, I'm going to talk more about this next time, we literally saw children running hand in hand, Jew and Muslim, Muslim and Christian, running together, playing together, learning together. It's fascinating. So there's a school. Also, we have musicians who are teaching children and youth all the way up until the time Israelis go into the military. From 4 years old until that time, about 18 years old, they are teaching, offering classical music training for both Arab Palestinians and Hebrew Israeli Jews. And so the kids are not just, they don't take their lessons on their own, but they are creating classical music together in quartets. And we got to see a concert. That's one. And then in Bethlehem, we met with this Lutheran pastor who is in Bethlehem, which is the West Bank. It is incredibly depressed. But he started an art school there. It is a college, but they do focus on the arts. And someone asked, why do you, I think Aaron shared this in church a couple weeks ago, why are you doing art? Why is that? Excuse me, people need to be focusing on like conflict resolution and stuff like that. Why are you teaching people art? And he said, we do art because what we need are creative people who can think outside the boxes that we have made and that we hand to them. And so we do art so that they can create a better world for all of us. It was powerful. He is a very realist type person. He was like, this is hard, and we may die here. But we're seeding hope in our art. These were powerful encounters that challenged me in my own prejudices, the way that I get in my own little pocket of the people I associate with, and et cetera, et cetera. Next time I'm here, we're gonna get more into everything, if we can. This was the absolute trip of a lifetime. I am amazed already at what God has been able to do in me, like I said, with these images and ideas, and the way that these faces come up to me at night in my dreams, reminding me of what I learned and what can be possible here in the United States even. Thank you for sending me.
Mm-hmm. You're representing something that's very, very valuable, very important. I'm a part of the founding member of Evangelicals for Middle East Understanding. Mm. And we would have Palestinians tell us, Christians from America come over here, and all they see are the dead stones, but they never talk to us living stones. Mm. And of course you all did. And I reminded George of that before he left. But it's very, very important. Mm-hmm. And then the arts are one of the keys to the infiltrating of all society.
And it's interesting that we looked at so much art in those old stones, that is also how faithful Christians and faithful people of all religions have been doing their faith and doing community together, was through this artistic expression. That's always been a part of it. I think that's fascinating. That's fascinating. Y'all, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not done with sharing. Hopefully we'll do it again.
One less teacher to have to find.